This really happened to me, and saying that out loud still makes my stomach knot. I'm a 62-year-old widow in Mesa, Arizona, and what I'm about to tell you began at my own kitchen table, beneath the ceiling fan that clicks faintly when the air conditioner kicks on. My son slid a quitclaim deed across the quartz and said, "Just sign it, Mom," while a mobile notary unfolded a stamp and Jade, his girlfriend, placed a silver pen between my fingers. We were gathered there because I'd just come home from knee surgery at Banner Baywood, and they said it was estate planning, something to make life easier if anything happened. The HOA folder, the thick binder with Sunland Village East stamped on it, sat open beside the fruit bowl like an uninterested witness. I felt the betrayal the moment I read the grayed box where my name would vanish and his would sit in its place, all dressed up in legal ink. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. I told the notary to wait. I told my son that his father, God rest him, had worked 38 years at the MVD, and we'd bought this patio home with cash after he passed, because safety felt like a roof without a mortgage. "We can talk about it," I said. But the anesthesia fog was lifting, and with it, the instinct I had used as a nurse for 3 decades. If something smells off, you don't ignore it. You check vitals, and you check again. "Mom, come on," Tyler pressed, folding his arms. He wore a sun devil's cap backward, like he was 20 instead of 34. A boy playing grown man. "It's a trust transfer, so probate is easier. Uncle Rob's kids had to fight in Pinal County for a year because they didn't have this stuff set up. Jade had that smile she uses when she's embarrassed for you. All pity and lip gloss. It's just good planning, Linda. Everyone does it. My mom's boyfriend does real estate in Tempe. He says quitclaims are supernormal." The notary, a tired woman in a cardigan whose name tag read Donna, hovered. "I can't advise you," she murmured. "I just witnessed signatures." "I'm not signing anything today," I said, pushing the pen back into Jade's manicured hand. And I pretended the tremor was from my knee and not the fear crawling up my throat. They didn't yell. That would have been easier. Tyler just rolled his eyes and leaned back in the chair his father refinished, the one with the little divot in the arm where you can feel the grain. "Fine," he said, as if I was making a scene. "We were trying to help. Help, they called it, as if the house had collapsed on me and they were there with shovels. They'd driven me home from the hospital and carried in meals from T.C. Eggington's and fussed over my ice machine. And then they brought in too many boxes, just for a week, and Jade's ring light sprouted in the guest room like a neon fungus. I tried to be grateful. I tried because I raised that boy and taught him to hold doors and send thank you notes. And I'd seen him cry when his father died at St. Joseph's, and I held him while he soaked my blouse in grief. People change slowly, like fruit left in the sun. You see the spots, and then, one morning, it's not good anymore. Sunland Village East is a 55-plus community off Baseline and Saucerman. We have that big clubhouse on Farnsworth, the lap pool where I walk in the mornings with my neighbor Joan, and the pickleball courts everyone jokes are the real religion out here. There are rules, sure, but they're not unreasonable. No short-term rentals, no overnight street parking without a pass, no major exterior changes without architectural approval, and the one that looks benign until it isn't. At least one occupant of each residence must be 55 or older, and under 55s may stay as guests, but they cannot reside beyond a limited period unless accompanied by the qualifying resident. The binder on my table spelled it all out in dry clauses that, until that week, I'd never read all the way through. That first night, after I refused to sign, Jade made spaghetti and banged pots hard enough to make a point. Tyler did laps on his phone, a finance app open, swiping up and up. You can stay here, I told them, while I recover. A week. And I meant it. I'm no fool, but I'm not hard-hearted either. It's the curse of mothers to hope we can coax decency back out of our children. Cool, Tyler said, and kissed my forehead like the son I used to know. It felt like being burglarized by a familiar face. While I slept fitfully with the ice cuff whining, I heard Jade whispering in the hall about changing the Wi-Fi. The next day, my HOA online portal wouldn't accept my login. We just fixed your password, Jade chirped, handing me a sticky note with new characters shaped like an inside joke I didn't get. I wrote our property manager, Miguel, the one who sits behind the glass in the admin building, asking if anyone had tried to make changes. He didn't answer. People don't when things are going wrong. They ghost out of fear they'll be pulled onto a sinking raft. 3 days later, I found the HOA sticker for parking permits peeled up from the inside of my Toyota's windshield and crumpled in the cup holder. We're using yours, Tyler said, as if it was a rational redistribution. We've got the Civic in the garage. There's only so many passes. It's my car, I said, ridiculous words, because of course it was my car, the one I'd bought at Earnhardt Toyota with the widow's discount they used like a flower they pin on you at the end of the service. I used to like that they said, "No bull." You don't drive, Jade said, glancing at my cane. We need to park on the street for the movers. The what? But she had already sashayed away in that impatient way of hers, and if I'm honest, I wasn't quick enough to chase the answer down the hall. Estate planning. They kept using the phrase like an eyeless needle that wouldn't draw blood, which is to say, safe. Tyler compounded the charm with family lore. How Dad would have wanted things easy for me. How it's complicated when people die intestate. I have a will, I kept saying. A simple one. I made it at a little office in Gilbert near Freestone Park, with a patient woman who asked about beneficiaries, like they were delicate eggs you could scramble with a wrong word. A will is good, Tyler said, but it's not liquid. I felt stupid for not understanding a metaphor, and then I felt angry that my son would use liquidity as a cudgel against the woman who taught him to tip servers 20% without calculating the pennies. On the 4th day, after physical therapy at a clinic on Baseline, I opened my banking app at the kitchen island to move $20 for the neighbor kid who had mowed my tiny patch of winter grass. My savings account had a small 1.29 debit I didn't recognize, and then another, a test charge, a micro deposit, and beneath it, a new connected bank entry I hadn't authorized. Did you set up something on my account? I asked the heir, and Tyler walked in exactly then, full of the luck of a liar who knows timing is half victory. I linked it to pay for the supplies, he said, as if it was noble. You know, for the house. What supplies? Contractors, Jade called from the guest room. We want to swap the old countertops for butcher block. It's like more modern. My quartz is not glamorous, but it's paid for. You can't approve renovations. It's an HOA. "We'll submit the architectural request," Jade said airily. "Don't be so fear-based." The notary returned on day 5. I was ready with a polite no, and my neighbor Joan sat at my table with crossed arms for moral support. Donna unfolded her stamp again and asked for my driver's license. I handed it over because people like me are trained to comply. And there's a way this all works while you're awake that makes you wonder how you get caught at all. "Again, I can't advise," Donna said, softly this time, like maybe she was a mother too. "But if you're not comfortable—" "I'm not," I said. Tyler looked like he had given me a big Christmas gift, and I'd thrown it back at the mall Santa. "Forget it," he hissed to Jade, and Donna packed up. Joan squeezed my hand under the table. Her palm was hot, and I remembered the night we both waited in the ER at Banner Desert, and she joked we'd earned our punch cards. That night, my phone buzzed at 11:17 p.m. with an email from the Maricopa County Recorder, which I set up months ago when a friend at church got caught in a deed fraud mess on her house in Glendale. It's an alert service, free, where they send you a note if any document is recorded against your name or property parcel. The subject line was cold. "New document recorded under your name." I tapped the link, and the page loaded slowly on my old iPhone, while the AC hummed its night song. Document type? Deed. I scrolled and saw my address, my parcel number, and my name paired with my son's, and the receipt stamp, like an accusation in blue-gray digital ink. I stood in bare feet, the tile cool under my arches, and my heart did that slow, then fast, panic thud. At the bottom was a PDF image. I pinched and zoomed until the screen showed a looping cursive that might have been mine to a stranger. It wasn't mine. It was an imitation, close enough to fool a bank teller, not close enough to fool the hand that had written permission slips and checks and condolence notes for 40 years. In the next room, Jade laughed at something on her phone, a bright, hollow ring. Tyler's silhouette passed in the hallway, and he paused when he saw the light on my face. "Mom, did you file a deed?" I heard myself ask, my voice smaller than I meant it to be. He leaned on the doorframe and shrugged, a new cruel casualness riding his shoulders. "Relax," he said. "You were fine with it. You don't remember? Donna witnessed it." "No," I said, louder. "No, she didn't. I didn't sign." He smirked like a boy who'd hacked the soda machine. "Well, the county seems to think you did." I looked at his face and realized with dull horror that he and Jade hadn't just planned to inherit a home. They planned to occupy it like a conquered fort. My father used to say, "You never know who someone is until there's money on the table." My father had never met a housing market like Phoenix in 2025. The AC kicked on, and the ceiling fan clicked, tick, tick, tick. I felt the room tilt gently, the way it does when you stand too fast and your blood is slow to catch up. "Get out of my doorway," I said, and the way he stepped back told me he'd weighed how far to push in that moment, and decided to save something for later. The next morning, they changed the locks while I was at physical therapy, and when I came back with my therapist's handout sticking out of my purse and my knee aching from the new bend, my key clicked and stuck. Jade opened the door like a receptionist in a sitcom. "Oh," she said brightly, "we were just upgrading the security. You should use the garage keypad. We'll text you the code." Like I was a guest. Like I was the one who needed permission to enter my own home. I smiled the kind of smile that has no blood in it and walked next door to Joan's. We sat at her kitchen table with coffee that tasted like metal, and she used her iPad to show me how to look up documents online. And there it was again. The deed. Number. Recorded. Document fee paid. Signatures in a row like little soldiers under a flag. I did not wave. The notary's name was not Donna. It was a man I did not know. Linda, Jones said softly, this is elder abuse. I'm 62, I said, half hysterical. Elder starts at 65. Joan arched a brow. Tell that to all the crooks who specialize in 55-plus communities. I called the recorder's office, and they explained, kindly, but in a script, that they don't verify the legitimacy of signatures. They record what is submitted. If I believed fraud had occurred, I could file a notarized affidavit of fraud, a police report, and seek a court order to set the document aside. I wrote everything down. Then I called the HOA office. We have a president named Richard Leland, a retired attorney with a gentle manner and a stubborn streak that shows when someone tries to game pickleball scoring. I'd always thought of him as a man you ask where they moved the annual cookout, not a man who could save your home. The receptionist said he was in a board session and took a message. I walked home and found Tyler installing a camera on the eaves, a glossy black eye. You need architectural committee approval for that, I said, and he laughed. Mom, he replied, we own the place. My hand closed around the HOA binder like a lifeline. I opened it to the page I remembered, the one about qualifying residents and occupancy, about under 55s as guests only. The words at first seemed to float like oil on water because panic had flooded me, and nothing will sit still in a mind like that. But the clause was there, underlined in the sample lease form. No person under the age of 55 may occupy a unit unless a person 55 or older occupies the unit as the primary resident. Guests under 55 may visit for a period not to exceed 30 days within a calendar year, unless otherwise approved by the board. There was more, but that was enough to tilt the table back my way. I texted Richard a photo of the page and wrote, I need help. My son and his girlfriend are under 55. They recorded a deed I did not sign. They are changing locks. I am at risk. My phone rang 5 minutes later. Linda, he said, voice steady, I'm coming over. When he arrived, Tyler was in the driveway with a tape measure, talking about building out the carport. Richard listened. He has that way of looking at you like your words weigh something. I'll need to review the CC&Rs and any title documents, he said at last, cool as a judge at a garden party. And, Linda, I'll call Miguel to change your portal password right now. We've had issues with adult children before. Mom's confused, Tyler said, puffing up, and there it was, the smear that works on women my age. Confusion, as if our brains are fog machines. Jade came out and draped an arm around Tyler's waist like she'd rehearsed empathy in a mirror. We're trying to do what's best for her, Richard. Richard's eyes softened in a way that told me he had his own son somewhere in the world. What's best for our community is consistency, he said. We'll read the rules. He did more than read them. He took the binder home, and the next morning he called and asked if I could come to the admin building at 10. Bring whatever you have from the recorder, he said, because he's the kind of man who believes paper beats charisma. And that day, I needed paper like breath. When I got there, he had the CC&Rs open and a legal pad with bullet points that calmed me the way orderly handwriting calms a storm. I'm not your lawyer, he said, but as a matter of association enforcement, here's where we stand. 1. The association doesn't approve transfers of title, so whether a deed is valid is for the courts. 2. Occupancy is absolutely within our purview. Without a 55-plus qualifying resident in full-time occupancy, under 55s may not reside. 3. If they are not owners of record or are in adverse possession, we still can enforce occupancy and nuisance violations and levy fines, suspend access to amenities, and, if necessary, seek injunctive relief. 4. Guests may not change locks, make external modifications, or use common elements in ways that violate policies. What does that mean in English? I asked. It means, he said, pen grounded on the pad, if you can get yourself out of the house for a few days, go stay with your sister, stay at a hotel, I can begin enforcement against underage occupants. The rule is not a technicality. It's the spine of our community. If they are the only ones there, we can serve them with a notice to vacate based on violation of the age restriction. We can coordinate with the City of Mesa, and if they ignore us, with the association's attorney to seek a court order for removal. I thought of my sister Teresa in Chandler with her pug and her spare room. I thought of the guest room in my own home, where Jade had set up her ring light and said, "Ugh, the lighting in here the first day," as if God owed her a better angle. I thought of Tyler in my garage, fingers on my husband's tools, and I nodded. "Do it," I said. "I'll move out tonight." Richard's face didn't change, but I saw the spark in his eyes, the look of a man who enjoys using rules to defend the vulnerable. Then let's make sure every I is dotted, because if this goes to court, it will be in the details. I left the office, drove past the Superstition Springs Mall, and parked in a corner of the lot to make the hardest call of my life. "Tyler," I said when he answered, "I'm going to stay with Aunt Teresa for a few days to recover. You and Jade can have the place to yourselves while I'm gone." He was wary for half a second, and then I heard the smile bloom. "That's great, Mom," he said, warmth flooding back into his voice, like butter melting. "Rest up." I hung up, and the tears came hard and fast. Not the pretty kind, the kind that leaves your face sticky and your chest bruised. I drove to Teresa's with a duffel bag and the binder, and Joan's prayers resting in my lap. At 9, the phone vibrated. It was Richard. "We served the first notice," he said. "Tomorrow morning, I'm convening an emergency board meeting. I want you there." When I set the phone down, a voicemail icon glowed like a warning flare. It was from Tyler. I pressed play, and his voice poured into the small Chandler guest room. Low and mean in a way I had only heard once before when he was 16 and full of beer behind the bleachers. "Mom," he said, "I don't know what the hell you think you're doing, but this is my house now. Don't make me be the bad guy." He paused, and I could hear Jade whisper something behind him, a hiss that turned my blood thin. Then Tyler spoke again, softer, scarier. "Don't come back." I didn't sleep. I lay on Teresa's guest bed and watched the light crawl across the ceiling, my phone face down on the nightstand because I couldn't unhear it. "Don't come back," looping with the click of my own ceiling fan from memory. Grief feels like drowning, but a peculiar kind where you can breathe, and that in itself feels wrong. By morning, resolve had boiled away the pity. I boiled coffee on her stove and made a list with a ballpoint, the cheap kind a bank gives you, and titled it "War" in big, shaky letters. At 10, I took a deep breath in the parking lot at Farnsworth Hall and walked into the boardroom. Richard sat at the end of the table, with the CC&Rs open like a hymnal. Miguel was there, and 2 board members I knew from water aerobics, plus a woman I didn't recognize in a navy suit with a leather folio. "This is our association council, Ms. Keating," Richard said. "Linda, have a seat." My knees argued with the chair, but I sat tall. Ms. Keating had the kind of calm lawyers cultivate like a houseplant. "I'll be blunt," she said, and that was a gift. "Deed disputes are for Superior Court. We can't adjudicate that. But age-restricted occupancy is squarely within the association's enforcement power. The rules require a qualifying resident, someone 55 or older, in full-time occupancy. Without you physically present, your son and his girlfriend are underage occupants. We can notice, fine, and, if necessary, seek injunctive relief to compel their removal." She slid a form across the table. "I've drafted a notice of violation and a cure or quit demand based on sections 3.1 and 6.4. We'll post it today." Richard cleared his throat and read aloud from the binder like scripture. "Sunland Village East Declaration of Restrictions. Article 7. Age Restrictions. Section 2. Occupancy Requirements. At least 1 occupant of each dwelling unit must be 55 years of age or older. All other occupants must be at least 19. Guests under 55 may not occupy for more than 30 days in any calendar year, unless approved by the board." Then he looked up, glasses low on his nose. "Linda, we're going to enforce. You will be all right." In that room, with the scent of dry paper and floor polish, and somebody's lemon hand lotion, I felt something harden in me, into a shape I recognized. It was the thing that carried me through night shift codes and doctor temper tantrums, and the week we watched my husband slip away while monitors sang a lullaby of decline. It was the part of me that doesn't break. I left the meeting and drove to the Mesa Police Department on Robson Street. The lobby is always too bright. It's like grief can't hide in the corners. A clerk with kind eyes took my statement about the deed. "It happens more than you'd think," she said, hitting the keys in a rhythm that made the story feel like railroad tracks under a train. "You'll need to file an affidavit of property fraud with the recorder and possibly a civil action for quiet title. We'll open a report and forward it to detectives for review. At the Maricopa County Recorder's office online portal, God bless the part of me that thought to enroll for alerts, I downloaded their affidavit of fraud template, then drove to the UPS store on Guadalupe for a notary. The clerk, a young man with a tattoo of a crescent moon on his wrist, watched me sign and stamped with a decisiveness that made it feel official. "My grandmother had a similar thing," he said, handing me the copy. "She kept every receipt after that." Back in my car, I called the Arizona Secretary of State's Notary Division because the name on the fraudulent deed wasn't Donna's, and I wanted someone else to say it mattered. "We'll open an investigation," the woman said, and her voice was all formality. But I heard the gear engage. Then I did the hardest thing on my list. I called Tyler. "I'm at the police department," I said when he answered. "I filed a report. I filed an affidavit with the recorder. I am meeting with a lawyer, and the HOA served you with a notice." He laughed, a sound I used to cherish when he was 5, and the sprinkler caught the light just right. "You did what?" "Mom, you're being dramatic. We didn't do anything wrong. It's just a piece of paper." "It's a house," I said, and the words came out ice cold. "My house." He lowered his voice, the way bullies do when they want to sound tender. We were trying to help. You're not well. You're not thinking clearly after surgery. We were making sure things are handled. I've been thinking clearly for 62 years, I said. Listen to me. You have 72 hours to vacate. Then the association will file for an injunction. Then the sheriff will enforce it. He snorted. The HOA can't do anything. They can, I said, and I hung up because letting him pour more poison into my ear felt like harming myself. Back at Sunland Village East, Richard and Miguel had already posted the notice in a plastic sleeve on my front door like a bright official bruise. It cited the rule and counted hours like a ticking clock and listed fines of $250 per day, cumulative, plus suspension of amenity access. It noted the unauthorized exterior modification, the camera, and the parking violations. We keep it polite, Richard murmured, and we keep it precise. Neighbors pretended not to look, but everyone did. This is an adult community. We live by routines, and the little dramas break the day like monsoon rain. Jade filmed herself on the sidewalk, hair in a high, flawless ponytail, speaking into her phone. So, like, our HOA is bullying us, she said to no one and to everyone. My boyfriend's mom is confused, and they're trying to kick us out, so if anyone knows a lawyer. She stopped when she saw me across the street and put on sunglasses like armor. Joan came out and slid her arm through mine. You want me to stay? She asked. I nodded, and we sat in her living room with HGTV, murmuring in the background, while time became a physical thing we pushed through. That night, Teresa sent a text with a photo of a pug in a sweater, and it made me cry because gentleness always breaks me harder than cruelty. On day 2, I had my knee check at Banner Baywood. The surgeon said the swelling was within normal range. Pain tolerable? He asked, and I almost laughed. I stopped at Fry's on the way home for rotisserie chicken, because hunger is stubbornly ordinary, and a woman from the bocce league hugged me in the parking lot like she'd heard the news by carrier pigeon and couldn't help herself. You get 'em, Linda, she said, fierce as a general in capri pants. On day 3, Ms. Keating filed a petition in Maricopa County Superior Court, seeking a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction to enforce age-restricted occupancy, along with a request to compel removal of unauthorized fixtures and to restrain any further purported transfer, based on the association's covenant authority. She CC'd me on the email with the stamped motion, and seeing the caption, Sunland Village East Association Tifras, Tyler Pierce, and Jane Doe, was like seeing your name on a lab result you already knew and still weren't ready for. A hearing was set for the following Monday, East Court Building on Jefferson in downtown Phoenix. Tyler and Jade did not respond to the notice. They did not call the board. They did not attend the emergency hearing held at Farnsworth Hall, where whole retirees stood at a lectern and shook as they told the board they had moved here precisely so they would not have to navigate under 55 chaos. Instead, on Saturday afternoon, a U-Haul appeared in my driveway, and 2 of Tyler's friends carried in a sectional. They're moving in, not out, Joan hissed, peeking through her blinds, outrage turning her cheeks the color of raw ham. Richard called me. Don't go over there. Don't engage, he said. We'll let the judge see the facts as they are. Sunday night, I couldn't pray in any language I knew. I sat on Teresa's porch and watched the Sonoran sky turn bruise purple and then forgive itself. When I finally slept, I dreamt I was back at the hospital, tallying drips on a clipboard, while a code raged in a different room, and all I had was my feet to run and my hands to push. Monday morning, I wore my black slacks and a blouse my husband always said made my eyes look like desert glass. In the courtroom, the air was cool and smelled faintly of old paper and cleaning solvent. Ms. Keating stood with her binder open to tabbed sections. Tyler and Jade sat on the other side. Tyler in a collared shirt, he looked borrowed, and Jade in a blazer over a dress that could have walked a red carpet. Tyler smirked when he saw me, and I let my face be the desert. Nothing soft to drink. The judge was a woman with kind eyes and a hairdo that said she'd given up impressive hair for precise rulings. She listened. Ms. Keating laid it out without drama. 55-plus restriction, qualifying occupant absent, underage occupants in residence, fines assessed, failure to cure, pattern of violations, and the association's duty to enforce or lose its exemption under federal and state housing law. This is not a landlord-tenant eviction, she clarified. This is covenant enforcement necessary to maintain an age-restricted community. Tyler's turn came. He started with the tone he used on me, patient to the point of insult. Your Honor, my mother is recovering from surgery and has been confused. We made arrangements to manage her affairs. We effected a deed transfer for estate planning and to protect her assets. The HOA is overreaching. We are her family. The judge looked at him for a long moment. Mr. Pierce, she said finally, even if you were the undisputed owner, which is not for me to decide today, this association's governing documents restrict occupancy. Without a qualifying resident present, under 55s are not permitted to occupy. The evidence shows the qualifying resident vacated the premises, and you took up residence. The court is authorized to grant injunctive relief to prevent ongoing violations. I am granting the association's motion. It was not dramatic, the way justice often isn't. It was tidy. She signed an order. Under 55 occupants to vacate within 48 hours, prohibited from reoccupying absent a qualifying resident, restoration of any removed association access devices, prohibition against alterations, and permission for the association to coordinate with the sheriff's civil unit for enforcement if they fail to comply. She added a paragraph that made my breath catch. Nothing in this order shall be construed to validate any purported transfer of title. Property rights shall be determined in a separate action. Then she looked at me, just for a second, and in that look, I felt seen in the way that makes your spine straighten on its own. We walked out of the East Court building into a sky that looked rinsed. Ms. Keating held the signed order like a shield. Now we serve, she said. Richard and Miguel will meet the sheriff's deputy this afternoon. They did. I stood across the street with Joan and 3 other neighbors, like we were watching a parade we hadn't asked for. A deputy in a tan uniform read the order on my porch while Richard stood beside him, HOA binder in his arm like a Bible. Tyler tried to film the deputy. You can film, the deputy said without heat. You still have to comply. Jade's lips were thin and white, and for the first time since the notary unfolded her stamp at my kitchen table, she looked afraid. 48 hours, the deputy said, and tapped the order with a single finger. Tyler called me that night, breathless with a kind of bewildered rage. You did this, he said, to your own son. You did this to yourself, I said, and it was not a line I'd practiced. It unfolded from a place so deep in me, I didn't know it had words. Leave my home. They didn't. 48 hours became an ember of anxiety in my chest. At hour 47, I watched a friend's husband, who used to be a contractor, do math in his head. They won't go, he said quietly, and he was right. At 9 the next morning, 2 sheriff's deputies and a locksmith arrived with Richard and Ms. Keating. The deputies were courteous and firm. "Under court order," one said, knocking hard enough to make my own ribs answer in the same rhythm. Tyler opened the door and tried to block it with his body, and the deputy stepped around him like water. "Sir, you need to gather your belongings. You are not being placed under arrest. You are being removed pursuant to an injunction. You may take personal items. Furniture can be arranged for later pickup with the association. But you need to vacate now." Jade burst into tears like she'd rehearsed it. "This is harassment," she sobbed to her phone. "This is like elder abuse of us somehow." The locksmith popped the deadbolt like opening a soda. Richard stood on my front step, and God bless him, he actually read the rule. He opened the binder and read the exact clause, word by boring word, his voice steady, his thumb on the margin where I had bookmarked it with a Post-it. It was the least cinematic thing you can imagine and the most devastating. The clear recitation of a promise we all signed so we could sleep at night. Age-restricted occupancy, guests, fines, board authority, injunctive relief, removal. It took 2 hours. Tyler fought with the deputy about his video game console like he was 13. Jade's ring light fell and cracked, and she screamed at it like it was a disloyal pet. A neighbor from 3 doors down made iced tea for the deputies, because that is who we are. I stood in Joan's driveway, hands shaking despite the heat, and tried to breathe through the adrenaline. When they finally walked down my concrete walkway, carrying duffel bags and bad mood, Tyler stopped and looked at me across the low desert landscaping my husband had chosen from a pamphlet. For a heartbeat, I saw my boy. Then it passed. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes," I said, soft as the underside of a leaf. "It is." The door closed. The locksmith changed the locks under Richard's supervision. Ms. Keating handed me a copy of the order and the new codes. Joan hugged me so hard my ribs protested, and we both laughed and cried, because sometimes your body doesn't know which to do. The deputies tipped their hats like a Western that believed in ladies, and I thanked them like they'd been my nurses. Inside, the air smelled like someone else's life. There were energy drink cans in my sink, and Jade's glitter in the grout of my bathroom floor, and a pizza box on my quartz that had always been sufficient and would always be enough. I stood in my kitchen and listened. The ceiling fan clicked, tick, 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 and I let it. I didn't celebrate. I went to work. I called the bank and closed every linked account and opened new ones with passwords not shaped like jokes I wasn't in on. I called the utilities and set new pins. I had a security company install a simple system I could understand without a degree in feeling old. Richard had the camera removed under the injunction, and the architectural committee did a walkthrough to confirm no exterior changes had been made without approval. "We'll waive the fines if you'd like," he said, voice gentle. "No," I replied. "Let them stand. You said consistency was what keeps us safe. Be consistent." The civil deed fight took longer because courts are slow to unwind what bad actors do in minutes. With Ms. Keating's referral, I met an elder law attorney named Patel, who saw me at a little office near the Southeast Regional Library in Gilbert. He had a way of explaining things like you already knew them, and he was just reminding you. He filed a quiet title action on my behalf and appended my affidavit and the police report. He subpoenaed the notary's journal and discovered, to no one's surprise, that the entry for the day of signing was a fiction. The notary's commission was suspended pending the Secretary of State's investigation, and a letter from a prosecutor's office appeared in my mailbox months later using words like charging consideration, which I didn't savor, but which felt like justice was a thing with shoes on. At the hearing on quiet title, the judge didn't waste time. "Miss Pierce," she said to me, because in that room I was Ms. again, not Mom, and that alone felt like a spell lifting. "I find credible your testimony that you did not sign this deed. I find by clear and convincing evidence that the document recorded was fraudulent. The court orders the deed set aside and the title quieted in your name. The recorder shall annotate the record accordingly." She awarded me costs and fees under a statute that sounded like a math problem. I wrote ARS 33420 in the margin of my notes because I liked that it had numbers. But what mattered was the order, blue inked and heavy in my hands. Tyler did not come to that hearing. Jade had left him, Instagram said, for a man who flipped houses in Queen Creek and fed her sushi on boats. Tyler called me a week later from a number I didn't recognize. "I'm trying to get into a program," he said, and I could hear the boy I raised in the spaces between his words. "Can I crash with you until I start?" "No," I said, and then I said what I never imagined I'd say to my only child. "I love you. You may not live here." He hung up. So did the past. I changed my will. I left the house to a hospice foundation in my husband's name, because good men should not be erased by bad sons. I updated my beneficiary designations and made Joan my medical power of attorney and told Teresa where the binder lives, because if this ordeal taught me anything, it's that papers save people when charm wants to trick them. I took the HOA cookies at the next meeting and thanked Richard in front of everyone, because public gratitude is part of the social fabric we keep knitting so we won't unravel when one of us is tested. For a long time, the hum in my ears didn't stop. I jumped at the sound of tires on my gravel and checked the porch camera like a compulsion. Healing isn't a montage in a song. It's a stack of Tuesdays where nothing dramatic happens, and your life grows around the scar tissue like a vine around a trellis. The women at water aerobics clapped when I did my first lap without stopping. Miguel waved from behind his glass like the world was less treacherous now that he had given me back my portal password. Ms. Keating sent me a card with a single sentence: "You did everything right," and I cried into it until the ink looked like blue rain. One evening, months after the deputies read the injunction on my porch, I made dinner: salmon with lemon and a salad with the little Persian cucumbers I like, set my fork down, and realized I had not thought of Tyler all day. Outside, the sky did that phoenix thing where it goes liquid orange right before it darkens, and I opened the sliding door to listen to the cicadas, saw the air. The ceiling fan clicked in the living room where it always did, a metronome I used to interpret as a countdown to disaster. I stood under it, palm up as if it were rain, and I felt no alarm at all, just the steadiness of a roof paid for with a life. the weight of a binder with rules that, when read aloud, sound like protection, and the knowledge that betrayal can live in your house only if you let it live in your head. My phone buzzed on the counter. Another alert from the recorder's system. New document recorded under your name. I opened it. It was the judge's order, the one that carved the false out of the true and put my name back where it belonged, official as a stamp, mundane as a grocery list, and as sacred as a vow. I printed it and slid it into the binder behind the tab Richard had dog-eared, then closed the cover and felt the quiet like a door finally locked. The last thing I did that night was stand at my window and look out at the street, where we all walk our little dogs and check each other's mail and argue about whether pickleball should be regulated. And I thought of my son, somewhere else, and I wished him the grace to become a man I could open a door to again one day. But grace doesn't mean access. It means I do not let his voice echo in my home like an order. "Don't come back," he said. And what I learned, standing under my humming fan, was that I don't have to, because I never left. The end.